to Jodson. He's going to be talking to us about Solarpunk networking. I am so hyped to hear what you have to say. Come on up, Jodson.
So, if you take 3 chimpanzees and a Maserati, you give these 3 the keys and turn them loose with time, you're probably going to get some chimpanzees in a moving car, eventually. And at the end of it, they'll probably crash and burn. And my question would be, did they know what they were doing before they actually crashed? Did they know that they were driving? For humans, this is an easy thing, like for us to come together and figure out what we're doing. Even if we're not exactly sure, we're kind of experimenting and going through a process, we figure it out. The internet is kind of the apex of our technology in this area. We're using it to take our thoughts and project them in video or different types of media onto the internet. Everybody looks at it, everybody enjoys. But there's so much there, like there's so many of us everywhere. We speak all kinds of languages. There's not really a clear consensus, and the internet just puts all that out there for everyone to see. This causes problems. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with what kind of problems it can solve, or it can cause. But I like to focus on what kind of problems this technology can solve, because I see a lot of opportunity here. I'm going to talk to y'all about 4 different technologies that I think are really important for us as we go forward into an uncertain future. The first one is citizen science. A lot of people don't think of things like this as a technology, but for me, with a communications background, I see a system for people to come together, like I said before, and figure out what we're doing. If we're all just going about using our senses, some of us are going to determine things to be true that are not necessarily fact, right? And so we use our senses in community to figure out what is actual fact. That's the scientific method. Citizen science is the public practice of this method. Regular people going through that process, sharpening themselves, trying to get a better sense of things, not by themselves, because by ourselves we're flawed, but in community, asking questions about the world. It's my opinion that this sort of social activity should be incentivized by money, whatever. We need to find a way to put this back into our societies. The second technology is, I'm going through this really fast, I just realized, wow. Network states. So this guy named Balaji Srinivasan wrote a book in 2022 called The Network State. And he was a crypto guy. He was trying to figure out a way to place a cryptocurrency in the middle of a society. And he, in my opinion, was pretty effective at describing how you would go about doing that. These are communities that are actually based on his idea. Some of these, one I know is in Montenegro. They've got a libertarian view, very interesting stuff. But what's really fascinating to me about this is not the fact that he's describing how to build a nation around a crypto coin. Like, whatever, we gain consensus off that. But the fact that you are actually compressing something as complex as a nation state into a program. Let me kind of drive this home for you on what I'm actually talking about. Bitcoin, which is what he's dealing with, all these cryptocurrencies. That took the monstrosity of an industrial complex of the Federal Reserve Bank. You have designers, you have printers, you have trucks that deliver the money, you have the Secret Service that covers down and makes sure that the money is protected just like the president. All that was copied and compressed into 3,000 lines of code. That's really significant. You can also compress taxi services. 75,000 lines at Lyft, 150,000 lines at Uber, and Airbnb I think is at 1.5 million lines, but it started out even smaller than that. The point is that you can take something that's this complex, nation states, government, currency, these are tools that only governments use, and we're compressing it into digital information. Fascinating stuff for the future. The second, or the third technology I want to hit on is something that I kind of play around with and I try to build as I experiment with computer programs, is a terrestrial operating system. I don't think I hit this real good in the very beginning, but the way the internet, works, it's connecting all of us, right? But it's just kind of a reflection of what we're doing on the ground. You know, you have all this development here, people working together, people doing stuff, living, all of our lights, right? But in the middle here, you have all this empty space. When I think about a terrestrial operating system flowing through the internet and all of us using it to achieve some type of goal, I think of nation states. I think of people trying to control territory and say, how much grain do we want to produce? How much do we want to tax from the people? How many resources are there to tax? All this statecraft information. All that to generate it by all this, but all this, I'm a science fiction guy, so to me this is like the equivalent of terraforming, if you're familiar with that concept. Terraforming is taking an inhospitable area and turning it into something that's hospitable, adding oxygen, adding water, things like that. NASA and all the space agencies are trying to figure out how to develop this kind of stuff going forward, to develop the moon, to develop Mars. It seems far off, but we're going back to the moon to try and colonize it by 2050, I believe. And that's China, not us. Replacing all this natural terraforming is very important. We're starting to figure out that the way that we develop here and here causes heat. Well, what causes cooling? We're trying to figure that out now. But what I'm getting at with the terrestrial operating system is like, we are already connected. Let's go ahead and use that information to achieve a larger goal. How can we transform the systems that we have right now, all industrial, all slow information, but it's being sped up in real time. We're only 40 years into this epoch change that we're in. How do we do this? How do we replace this? There are processes to be explored here. The fourth thing, is Solarpunk. This is just a design philosophy that I've run into the last maybe 3 weeks. I've been studying real deep into it. Andrewism, our changing climate. But what resonates with this, and the reason why as a philosophy it resonates, is that I was on a development path trying to achieve this before I even got to Solarpunk. My design philosophy before was derived from Hebrew Bible scripture, and the concept of the garden city was really important. I've been studying with the guys from the Bible Project for the past 2 years, Dr. Timothy Mackey and John Collins. And they break down those scriptures in a Hebrew context, not an American context. And that's how I was raised. I didn't understand it. Now that I understand it, like this concept of a garden city, super important. And it's always been important to me to be close to nature and things like that. But to see that in a city environment where there's inequality, there's deprivation of character, there's all these different things happening that we have to fight against, but we bring nature back into it. It's a beautiful thing to me. They highlighted a particular story, Cain and Abel, and they retold that from a different context where they didn't focus on the murder or what happened after in generations past, but they said Cain went, he built a city and formed these walls that blocked communication, that blocked participation, and then we have these examples like Sodom and Gomorrah where cities are destroyed and things like that. But that's not the full story of the Bible. In the end, he says God is trying to put the garden back into the city to redeem it. And when I was thinking about that, developing this app that I'm working on, this is what I was picturing, right here. And then to run into it, completely separate from what I was going for, and they're expressing it in all of their artwork, in all of their written philosophy, and all of their spoken philosophy that they're putting out there. This group is expressing what I'm thinking. Technologies like this, philosophy isn't technology, it's something that, it's just a communication method, right? They're putting it out there, I'm thinking it, finding those like minds in a future where we don't know if we're going to be able to achieve this. We don't know what our future looks like. There's a lot of questions, but to dream is really important to me. And I'm not saying like this is the kingdom of God coming to earth or anything like that. Not at all. But it's, in my opinion, a step in that right direction. And that is it. How did I do on time? I feel like I finished it.